Good afternoon, participants. I welcome you to the third day on the forenoon session on Virtual Symposium on Recent Trends in Aquaculture Industries. The kind attention to participants to mute your audio and disable your video so that the session goes smoothly. And I welcome Dr. Inbagandan, Scientist and Head of Center for Ocean Research, Satyabama University, and our guest speaker, Mr. B. Ravikumar, sir. So shall we go with the introduction part, sir?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So Mr. B. Ravikumar, Technical General Manager, Grovel Feeds Private Limited in India. So Mr. B. Ravikumar is an aquaculture expert working in the field of aquaculture for more than 25 years in India, Philippines, Iran, Madagascar, Mozambique, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. He obtained his Bachelor of Fisheries Science and Master of Fisheries Science from Fisheries College and Research Institute, Tamil Nadu Veterinary and Animal Science University, Tuticorin, India. He has worked in network of aquaculture centers in Asia Pacific, IFC World Bank Group, Asian Development Bank, and World Fish Center projects as aquaculture specialist and project manager, and as BMP expert in FAO projects related to improving the livelihoods of small-scale farmers in Indonesia and Bangladesh. He also worked as a farmer manager at integrated shrimp farming projects in Africa promoted by European companies. Presently, he is working as a technical general manager at Grovel Feeds Private Limited in India. It is with deep pride and humility to invite you to give the talk on minimizing production costs for sustainable shrimp farming. Thank you, sir. The session is over to you. You can carry on, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Thanks for the introduction. Just 1 minute. Please give me 1 minute. I'll open my PPT.
No problem, sir. Take
Yes,
your own
sir,
time,
yes.
sir. No problem.
Yeah.
Information to participants, kindly don't use scribble pen and do annotations in the screen while the session is going on. And kindly mute your audio and disable your video. Thank you.
PPT still it is loading. Sorry, it's taking few minutes or just a few seconds.
Yes, sir. No issue.
Switch open this now. Sorry.
It's a time.
First opening this.
Open on sir. Error వచ్చి project.
Only one click. Okay. Okay.
Mute பண்ணோம் மாமி பேசிட்டு கேட்க அப்புறம்.
Participants, kindly mute your audio. It's disturbing to us.
Madam, can you see the person slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
It's
sir.
visible,
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Shall I start now?
Yes,
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
sure.
Yes, sir. You can.
Yeah. Very good afternoon to all of you. I would like to thank the organizers, Dr. Inbagandan, for giving me the opportunity to talk about minimizing production costs for sustainable shrimp farming. So, why I have selected this topic, and this is the need of the hour. Now the shrimp farm gate prices are fluctuating, even for the last 2 weeks, for 100 count for 10 gram size, even the prices are prices dropped to 170 rupees. So minimizing the production cost is very important to have profitable shrimp farming. And if you see the typical production cost assessment, feed cost is around 50 to 60% of the cost of production. So in my data, we have collected data across India, more than 1,000 ponds. So in our data, it shows the feed cost is around 51.60% of the total cost of production. The next is chemicals. Chemicals, it's around 12.97%. And chemicals, it includes limes, mineral, and other chemicals. Then next, electricity. Electricity, it's around 8.57%. It includes diesel and electricity. Then the shrimp seed, it's around 8.11%. Then the salary, 6.87%, and other expenses, 11.88%. So the feed is almost 50 to 60% of the cost of production. So we have to have a very stringent feed management to have a profitable shrimp crop. Then the producer cannot really control the market price. Therefore, controlling the production cost is the very fundamental. And even the issues that influence the profitability, disease has a high influence. And shrimp disease ranked as the topmost concern for shrimp producers ever since Global Aquaculture Advocate started surveying the industry. Global Aquaculture Alliance started surveying the industry since 2001. Is the topmost concern for the shrimp producers. Then if you see the disease, the white spot disease, mass mortality, and also premature harvest due to white spot disease, and also the other diseases like white fecal syndrome because of EHP and Vibrio due to caused by Vibrio and DHP, and because of white fecal syndrome, the FCR is high feed conversion ratio, and the average body weight is very low, and also because of the extended DOC, it will increase the other production costs like power and supplements, etc. So we will see now how to minimize the cost of production and maximizing profits. First, PL selection. PL selection, stocking only the best quality shrimp PL will have a significant effect on the production and the profitability of a shrimp farm. So that is very, very important for to control the the production cost. Very important. And next, biosecurity. Biosecurity, the strict principles of biosecurity to be adopted in an individual farm. That is very, very important to have a successful shrimp crop without diseases. Then to undertake on-farm nursery, that is also becoming important to know the exact survival rate and also to produce healthy animals. Then, as I told you, feed accounts for 51.6% of the total cost of production. So efficient and very stringent feed management is essential throughout the crop. Then when it comes to water quality, bioremediation and minimum or no use of chemicals. I don't normally recommend to use many chemicals, and it's better to go for bioremediation. We'll see in the future slide. Then shrimp disease management. This disease management also very, very important. It's to identify the disease, and when it is at the clinical stage. Clinical stage means when small part of the population, when the shrimps they have symptoms of disease. That time, if we identify the disease, then easy for the treatment. Then when it reaches, the prevalence is very high. Reaches around 20 to 30% of the population, and it's when it reaches subclinical level, and it is very difficult to control the disease. Then I told you how to select the post larvae. We will see one by one now. The TCBS plate count of post larvae tissue tells a lot about the PL quality. So in general, here in the farming community, so as a part of my job, I used to visit several farms in a week. So here, when I talk with the farmers, most of the farmers, when they collect the PL samples, normally they go for first PCR test, then they go for PL microscopy and stress test, etc. But what I suggest, so it is better to go for Vibrio test first. As I told, the Vibrio load in the PL is very, very important. Once the Vibrio test pass, then go for the PCR test for known viruses like white spot, EHP, etc. Then the third step, it should be like a PL microscopy, and the last one is stress test before stocking. So when we select the PL from the hatchery, so it is better to have a Vibrio check. It's better to reach the aqua labs within 6 hours. Then we can get accurate results. When you check in the TCBS media, the bacterial load, it should be green condition, should be less than 1 × 10⁻² CFU per gram of PL. When it comes to yellow colony, 1 into 10^3 CFU per gram of PL. So once below this level, I recommend to go for the second step, the PCR. And also the third one is then the PL microscopy, where we can check, gut muscle ratio and for any necrosis. So the hepatopancreas condition and other things we can check in the microscopy. And the last one is the stress test. This is very, very important. And then I told you to undertake on-farm nursery. Normally, I recommend the farmers, go for the simple nursery system. If they have a, earthen pond or lined pond, so better within the farm, select the small pond for the nursery. Then, implement very strict biosecurity than the grow pond. The purpose of the nursery phase is to reduce the risk, shorten the culture period at the growth phase. It will reduce the cost. And for this, you don't need to go for big infrastructure. Better whatever the infrastructure you have in the farm level, and with a good pond preparation, we can use earthen pond or lined pond for nursery purpose. And also good biosecurity is very important. And in the nursery phase, it's better to go for the combination of aerators and blowers. That is my suggestion. Better to go for use more blowers than the aerators for good oxygen levels throughout the nursery phase. That is very, very important. And this nursery phase also, I told you because in our R&D nursery, we are normally rearing the PL for 23 to 30 days. Then when it reaches 0.3 to 0.5 gram, we are shifting the animal. For example, you have one nursery pond, N1. Then you wanted to transfer that animal to 3 ponds, G1, G2, G3 growth pond. So what strategy we are following is, when you harvest the first time, initially, when you shift the animal, normally you are able to catch the bigger animals and the very healthy animals. So if you wanted to transfer it to 3 ponds, better that whichever animal transferred to the pond N1 to G1, you go for little bit higher stocking density. For example, the farm average stocking density is 40 pieces per square meter. I would recommend you go for 45 pieces per square meter during the first transfer. Then the second one, maybe you can go for 40. Whatever animal you're transferring, at the end of the transfer, at the end from the nursery pond, that you can minimize the stocking density to 30 pieces per square meter. So that way it's working out very well. All the animals, the same time it comes for the harvest. Then when it comes to water treatment, sterilization of water is very much required for the nursery. Then regular application of probiotics before and after stocking. You have to start applying probiotics at least minus 10 days of stocking. That is very, very important. And when it comes to feed, nursery, better to go for high quality feed or functional feed, and also multiple feeding times, 6 to 8 meals per day. That is mandatory to have a healthy journal. That is very, very important during nursery phase. Then when it comes to feed management, I told you we have to have a very stringent feed management, because it accounts for 60% of the 50 to 60% of the cost of production. Then every 0.1 reduction in FCR can increase the profitability by 7,500 rupees Indian rupees per ton of shrimp production. And the other way around, every 0.1 increase in FCR will produce 90 kg more organic waste per ton of shrimp production. Then there's more organic waste. Then the farmer, they have to spend more money on the treating the soil and improving the water quality, etc. So it will increase the cost of production. So then the best practices for feed efficiency start immediately after PL stocking. So it is better to know as accurately as possible how many PLs are being packed from the hatchery, because that is very, very important. Even when the bags, seed bags, when you receive at the farm site, you have to count at least to minimum 3 to 5 bags to have a average number. Then only it will give you the correct number, how many PLs being stocked in the pond. Then we have to minimize the transport stress and acclimatize properly during stocking. That is also very, very important to have a good survival rate at the beginning, because most of the farmer, it has been noticed that they are checking only the salinity difference between the hatchery bag water and the pond water. So it is better to check always also pH. If the pH difference also sometime, if it is more, if it is 1 unit difference is there in some cases, and you can see the PLs are jumping when the stocking is, takes place, the PLs are jumping. That means you can notice the pH difference is very high. The pH difference is very high. You have to acclimatize the PL, slowly before stocking. That is also very important. And in some ponds, if you see the PLs are jumping during stocking, that pond, it has been noticed that there is a drop of around 50 to 70% survival rate. Even some farms, the farmer could not see PLs after 30 days of stocking. So that means 90 to 100%, mortality at the time of stocking because of the pH difference and other factors also. Then estimate the Hapa survival rate at the pond. That is very important. And when you are stocking, we can introduce like 100 to 200 numbers in the Hapas. Then estimate the survival rate after 24 hours and 48 hours to know the survival rate at the time of stocking. That is very important. Then estimate survival rate at the first sampling. Typically, it should be around 30 DOC to know the survival rate. Then, as I told you before, better to undertake on-farm nursery rearing before grow out. This is very, very helpful. And when you stock, for example, 1 million in the nursery, then when you transfer 0.8 million to the grow out pond, that means that 0.2 million weak animals eliminated at the nursery phase itself. It's not going to cause the problem in the grow out pond. So I suggest all the farmers better to go for on-farm nursery, the simple nursery, to have a healthy juvenile and to know about the exact numbers at the time of stocking. That is very important. Then when it comes to feed, in the market there are feeds available: high protein feed, low protein feed, and generally, in my experience, these high protein feeds are generally perform better than low protein feeds, provided highly digestible ingredients are used, amino acids and other key nutrients are present in sufficient quantities and well balanced. Then the feeds are processed properly. So, but the important thing here, when you use the high protein feed, very stringent feed management is essential when high protein feeds are used for economical feed conversion. That is very important. Yeah. Excuse me. Is it audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Very stringent feed management is essential when high protein feeds are used for economical feed conversion. For example, when I use the high protein feed, the feed with a 38% protein plus, then when I use with the 34 or 36% protein, when the animal is like a 10 gram in size for 1 lakh, we used to recommend with the low protein feed like 26 to 28 kg per lakh of animal. When it is high protein feed, our recommendation is normally 18 to 20 kg per lakh of animal is enough, sufficient to have the same growth rate and better growth rates. So that is also very important in the feed management. Then this is something related to the feed particle size. So 3 different types of feed type. If it is pre-grower, 1.6 mm, then grower 1, 1.8 mm, grower 2, 2 mm. If you actually count the number of pellets per kg of feed, if it is 1.6 mm, it will be around 1.5 lakh pellets will be there per kg of feed. And if it is 1.5 mm, roughly it will be like 1.2 lakh. If it is 2 mm, then it's like 90,000 pellets per kg of feed. Then the last table I have given is like a mean weight of the pellet, each pellet size. So as per the prevailing feed rate, we have collected data from around more than 600 farms to have what was the prevailing feed rate 2019 second crop. Then we found that when the animal size is ABW between 4 to 10 gram in size, the pellet per shrimp per meal given was, as per the prevailing feed rate, it was 12 pellets per shrimp per meal. Then when it reaches the 33 gram, then it went up to 15 pellets per shrimp per meal. So, but if you see the right side, the shrimp of about 4 gram size consumes on an average 6 pellets a meal. That is 4.2% of the body weight per day. So that means the prevailing feed rate, whatever pellets we are giving, 12 is almost, we are giving 100% higher than the what is the animal, the required quantity for the shrimps. So we have to be very, very careful when it comes to feeding. Normally, I recommend to go for correct feeding or slightly underfeeding. Don't go for overfeeding. Overfeeding, it will cause, that is the starting point for all the problems, water quality problem and, buildup of organic matter and so many other issues immediately problem will start in the pond. So, but always we have to have a correct feeding or slightly underfeeding, that is better. And then most of the farmers, they are adjusting the feed between the rations or based on the check tray observations. And in my experience, this check tray, the results is highly variable between the farm to farm and between the pond to ponds also. High variability based on the pond size, shape, and number and the location of the trays, and it's not giving accurate results. If the pond is a very bigger pond, irregular shape, then it's also then the depth of the pond, and there are so many factors influencing the check tray results, and we cannot adjust the feed only with the check tray observation. And this is observing the gut. If you see the shrimp, there are two shrimps on the right side. The shrimp intestine is filled with the natural food, appears blackish in color. The left side, the shrimp intestine is filled with the pelleted feed, appears slight brown in color. So here the suspected problem, how to find out if it is overfeeding. Suspected problem is overfeeding. Then 1 hour before feeding time, then if you see above 10% of the shrimp having feed in the gut, then the action, it should be reduce the feeding. If it is underfeeding, then 1 hour after feeding, if above 40% of the shrimp having natural food in the gut, then we have to increase the feeding. Then the feed adjustment also, it should be based on the temperature. The temperature, when the temperature is between 28 to 32 degrees centigrade, we should give normal feed. And if it is below 26, we have to reduce the feed also by 25%. And especially when the high temperatures, we have to be very careful with the feeding, because whatever feed we put in the check tray, and it will be consumed fast when the high temperature, because that time when the temperature is above 34 degrees centigrade, then the feed transit time in the gut is only 45 minutes. Whatever the animal shrimp consume the feed, it will come out as a undigested feed. So it will not reflect in the growth. So that is, it will in turn, it will increase the, it will build up the organic load in the pond. So we have to be very, very, when the temperature is high, we have to be very careful increasing the feed or adjusting the feed. That is very important to have a stringent feed management. Then how to arrive the daily calculations. These daily calculations, it should be farm specific. From one farm to another farm, it varies also. Then based on observations and data, then as I told you, use check tray and feeding table. And when it comes to feeding table, and the farmer should follow different feed rate during summer crop, and during winter crop, the feed rate should be, he should have two different feeding table, one for the summer and one for the winter. That is very important. And be willing to adjust the feed daily and stay within the lower and upper limits based on the pond biomass and carrying capacity. So ideal feed management would be like a feed table, then plus check tray observation, plus as I told you, intestine color check. So we have to strike a balance between all these things, and we have to decide what should be the feed given per day per pond. Then when it comes to feeding now, the concept, many farmer they are using also auto feeders. Slowly that concept is coming up. Manual feeding, if you compare manual feeding versus automatic feeding, increasing feeding frequency improves definitely feed efficiency, Then manual feeding by labor requires close supervision, because feeding is part of biosecurity. Must not overfeed and must not, as I told you before, it should not underfeed also. If you see automatic feeder, there are two different types of automatic feeder. One is ration is set by the farmer and delivered using a timer, and the other one is acoustic feeder. The ration is driven by the shrimp feeding activity, which is transmitted to the feeder as a signals of sound. In our R&D farm, we are using this acoustic feeder for the fast 2 crops, and it's giving the best FCR, and also the pond bottom pollution and water quality parameters are very stable, because this acoustic feeder, we found that very useful, to have the correct feed management. Then automation in farming, the farmers in future, they have to depend on automation. The Internet of Things and artificial intelligence is the way forward. And also with the manual feeding, many, it's like, from contamination from one farm to another, one pond to another pond also. If the laborers are not following proper biosecurity measures and the other thing, the disease also will spread between the ponds. Then performance of pelleted feed versus extruded functional feed. This is our observation in our customer ponds, in our R&D ponds. Survival rate, with the functional feed, survival rate went up by 24%, and the daily growth rate went up by 30%, and the feed FCR reduced by 21%. Functional feed increased the potential shrimp growth and profit per unit of feed intake. Then water quality management, as I told you, water quality management is very important, and continue, to that fermentation, probiotic fermentation, application of probiotic, even before stocking, immediately after filling, we start this probiotic fermentation. It's giving good results. And the principle is to encourage probiotics to multiply and utilize organic matter. So what are the materials required? We need water from reverse osmosis. That water should be free from pathogenic bacteria. That is very, very important. If you have a doubt, you can check with the lab. You can send the samples to the lab and check for Vibrio and other pathogenic bacterial load if there is any present in the source water used for the probiotic fermentation. Then we need carbon sources, then minerals and probiotics and aeration. Then, as I told you, the water used for the fermentation, it should be sterile, fresh water, and free from pathogenic bacteria. That is very, very important. And then molasses and sweet potatoes and these carbon sources, corn flour, rice bran, all these inputs should be cooked before using, because it also, sometimes source for the pathogenic bacteria. So we have to, all these inputs should be boiled before. Then the probiotic, any probiotic, you can use that. That is depends on the CFU per gram of the product. Normally, we used to recommend, each applications 200 to 300 grams per applications. Later, I'll tell you exactly how to apply. Then with aeration, it will be aerobic activation. Without aeration, anaerobic fermentation. So this is a short video clip, in our R&D farm, how we are doing probiotic fermentation. As I told you, the water should be sterile, and the molasses and other rice bran, everything should be cooked, boiled before using. And normally this after mixing everything, we used to keep it for 18 to 20 hours before application. And especially sometime, we send after fermentation also, we send this juice, the fermented juice, to the lab to identify, to check whether this is contaminated any pathogenic bacteria. If Vibrio is found in that juice, then it is, the protocol, they made a mistake, and that is contaminated. Maybe the water source, or maybe the contamination is through the thing. These probiotics, as I told you, there are two different types. One is aerobic and anaerobic. And aerobic fermentation, we need with the aeration, and anaerobic fermentation without aeration. So this is the way we used to prepare, and we used to apply. You can see. and also this is the application, and every day, once in 3 days we are applying. Then bioremediation, if it comes, as I told you, 100 liter of fresh water, preferably water from the reverse osmosis, then 2 to 3 kg of molasses, then 0.5 to 1 kg of rice bran, then 0.5 to 1 gram of other sources of starch, corn and sweet potatoes, that is optional. Then 200 gram of mineral or feed premix, then 200 gram of sodium bicarbonate. This is just to maintain the alkalinity. Then 100 to 200 gram of water treatment probiotics. If it is aerobic fermentation, the farmer should use water probiotics. Then if it is anaerobic fermentation, they can use soil probiotic. And the applications, as I told you, if it is aerobic fermentation juice, then the morning time is better. That is for the water treatment. And if it is anaerobic, the application time is night time 10 p.m. So this application we used to start, when to start, that is also very important. And normally we start after dechlorination, when the farmers are treating the the pond water before stocking with the chlorination. Then immediately after dechlorination, we have to start this process. Why? Because immediately we have to start that time. If the farmer, the delay, that time the Vibrio will multiply, because the Vibrio will multiply, every 12 minutes. And the probiotic bacteria, it needs minimum 50 to 56 minutes to multiply 1 to 2. So most of the farmer, most of the farm, it has been noticed that after dechlorination, they kept the pond for 13 days, 14 days, or sometimes 3 weeks while they are searching for the seed, good quality seed, checking the seed, etc. That is not at all advisable. Why? Because if the farmer, after dechlorination, the sterile water is more it is the good environment for the Vibrio to multiply. Then the farmer, if they the time between the dechlorination and the stocking, if the lead time is 2 to 3 weeks, the time the Vibrio will reach, the load will reach at its peaks. Then if once it reaches 1 into 10^3 colony forming units per ml of water, that is not advisable. That time with the farmer stock may end up with problems. So that is, so this probiotic is also what I am recommending. They have to start minus 10 days of stocking and immediately after dechlorination. Then if the DOC is 100 DOC, for example, the farmers are targeting to grow up to 25 grams and or 30 grams. The DOC is 100 DOC. The frequency of probiotic application is once in 3 days. That is from minus 10 days. And up to 50 DOC, they can use, like water probiotic one time. Then after 3 days, again water. Then the next time, soil. That means water, soil, up to 50 DOC. When after 50 DOC, when the feed input increases, then that time the farmer should use more soil probiotic. That is like a 2 times soil, then water. So all this, regularly we have to continually use, and we can use like a 200 to 300 grams per day. For example, if the DOC is 110 days and the frequency of applications is once in 3 days, the number of application is 37. So if the farmer used, for example, 150 gram per hectare, then it will be 5.5 kg. If they use 300 gram, it will be only 10 kg of probiotic for the entire crop. And when it comes to shrimp disease management, I told you white fecal disease, then EHP. This slide actually from Dr. Lochtron, and Dr. Lochtron is also a consultant for our company, and we are also following some of his protocols in our R&D pond on disease management. We have developed some SOP. So in his findings, he said vibriosis is the primary agent of white fecal disease, and a pre-infection with EHP may increase the severity of white fecal disease in a Vibrio challenge at laboratory studies. Similar phenomenon is observed in the field, leading to 2 types. Because white fecal disease only with the Vibrio is treatable, and if it is with the vibriosis plus EHP combination, then it's difficult to treat at the pond level. Again, it depends on the degrees of infection of the EHP. What stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3. In the further slide, in another slide, I'll explain. okay, how to check that EHP, the degrees of infection, and how to manage the white fecal disease. Clean PLs, very important. Then clean pond and clean water, clean PL. These three important. And microbiota maturation. I told you it is better to understand the microbiota balance in the pond always. What is the probiotic versus and the pathogenic bacteria? That is very important. And water management also. Waste management, the siphoning of the waste and other thing. Then you should not, if you are going for siphoning, you should not throw that waste in the canal. We have to have a proper treatment system at the farm complex itself, and we have to treat that water before releasing into the outlets. Then nursery, on-farm nursery is important. Then use of functional feeds also to control the white fecal disease. Then this is EHP is an emerging pathogen affecting culture shrimp in Southeast Asian countries. The typical clinical signs of EHP are slow growth and growth retardation. Then if the shrimps do not grow, we have to check for EHP. EHP does not directly cause mortality, but the parasite can cause severe growth retardation affecting the farm production and profitability. It will affect the profitability because of the slow growth. Then presence of the parasites and severity of parasitism need to be correlated with the growth performance and feed conversion ratio to be properly managed. And this is how to check EHP at the farm level, the degrees of infection. So this one even no need to go to the lab. If you have a qualified technical person or technician at the farm level, we can check at the farm level. We need only a simple microscope. And how to check, if the pond, when we are collecting the samples from the EHP affected pond, the size variation, it clearly indicates that pond is, got the EHP infection. And when we collect the samples from the pond, we have to collect all the animals, small size, medium size, and bigger size, and bring it to the laboratory. Then we lift the carapace to expose the hepatopancreas, and after remove the hepatopancreas and put it in a clean petri dish. Then cut a small piece of hepatopancreas tissue that is from the central part, because the central part is the older part of the hepatopancreas, and include part of the anterior midgut also, if possible, within hepatopancreas region, because the spores are best viewed in the non-storage organ. Then mount the tissue in saline solution. Mount the tissue in saline solution and put cover slip and press it gently, so that without damaging the tubules. Then we have to examine under the oil immersion, and with the oil immersion, then we can see here the serum hepatopancreas heavily infected with the EHP spores. That EHP spores form clusters in the cytoplasm. Here in the arrows, you can see this one. So based on the degrees of infection, we can say which stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And when it reaches stage 3, then the farmer used to get the shrimp weekly growth rate is only less than 1 gram per week. Most of the cases it will be like a 0.7 gram per week. That time better to go for harvest, because the farmers no need to wait. And these stage 3, when it reaches stage 3, it has been noticed most of the cases irreversible. So the farmers spend more money for the inputs, because of the extended DOC, and then the profitability is very low, and sometimes farmers also in a loss because of the extended DOC and slow growth rates. So when it reaches, and the growth rates are very low, below 1 gram per week or 0.7 gram per week, it is better to harvest that pond. Then also, again, we have to treat, after harvest, we have to treat the pond with the EHP. Immediately after harvest, we suspect that pond is harvested because of the EHP problem. Then we have to use 6 tons of calcium oxide quicklime, 6 tons, because the soil also, it should be slightly wet, then only we have to apply calcium oxide. It will increase the pH, and thereby killing all the spores and eliminating EHP. That is the only way we can eliminate before going for the next crop. Then this is the results from our demo form with the concept, we used functional feeds, auto feeder, and I told you fermentation. With the fermentation, we could able to control the Vibrio load most of the time in the water also, even less than 10⁻⁴ CFU per ml. And the animal also, the Vibrio load is very low. And we use only the probiotics and minerals, and we did not use any other, and lime need basis, and did not use anything. Then when we use the this fermentation juice, as I told you, it should be continuously used, and from the beginning, minus 10 days of stocking, that is very important. When you are getting darker, sometimes you are getting dark green color water, then that time no need to add rice bran. You have to avoid without rice bran. We can do the fermentation, and we can apply. And here, if you see the results, the stocking density here in R&D form, it's ranging between 35, then up to 50. And with the functional feed and with the fermentation and with the auto feeder and the FCR also, we could able to control. And the last drop we achieved, the best FCR, it's close to 0.9. And also we have almost using this, this fermentation and functional feed for the past 2 years, almost more than 6 drops. And we got good results with this. We don't have a problem with the white gut, and we do have a problem with the running mortality when the carrying when the biomass exceed the carrying capacity. That time we had running mortality at the size when animal reaches 30 gram, 27 grams, like that. So this is to conclude my presentation. Take home messages. The seed start with the pathogen-free post-larvae. That is very, very important for the shrimp crop production and profitability of a farm. And stocking the only best quality shrimp PL will have a significant effect on the production and profitability of a shrimp farm. On-farm nursery rearing is before growth, but follow strict biosecurity to avoid EHP. Then manage feed aggressively. Do not overfeed. Use immune-enhancing functional feeds. Functional feeds definitely offer a solution. Then pond, address the problem of EHP at the pond preparation itself. Then keep a healthy microbiota balance. Use the right probiotics and provide sludge removal and collection feeds. Thank you very much. Thanks one and all.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the wonderful presentation, sir. Actually, you have technically dissected what is the pond management from feed to even to vibriosis as well as white gut disease. Thanks a lot, sir. Sir, shall we move to the question and answer session?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, please.
Yes,
Anu, are you there? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, sir.
Thank you, madam.
And there are compliments coming from the participants that it is an informative and wonderful presentation, sir.
Thank you.
So,
sir, I have one question. Shall I start with the question and answer session with my question?
Yes, sir, please. Please,
sir, actually, you said this white gut disease is because of this vibriosis load.
Yeah.
Sir, is it anything specific on the species level? Actually, normally we can see the enumeration of Vibrio harvey in the pond. So is it anything related to the load of the Vibrio is causing this thing? I'm asking about the number of counts.
What we found, sir, when a Vibrio load is up to when it reaches, below 1 into 10⁻³ CFU in our R&D, my experience, in our R&D ponds, up to 1 into 10⁻³ CFU per ml is not a problem. That time that quorum sensing effect is not there. When Vibrio load beyond that, and we had a problem like vibriosis and some mortalities also. Sometimes we had a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, and also this white fecal syndrome, as I told you, sometimes it's caused only by Vibrio is treatable, and when it is with the Vibrio and the EHP, like a stage 2 or stage 3, and difficult to treat that pond. That's all. And that time, hepatopancreas also got damaged, and that hepatopancreas function is impaired that time. So that time the farmer, the shrimp growth rate is very, very low.
So if according to your answer, can I come to a point like this, sir? If the Vibrio load is increasing, there may be a chance for microsporidium to populate it, and that may increase the lethality of white gut disease. Am I right, sir?
Not like that, sir. EHP prevalence, actually, EHP weakens the shrimp hepatopancreas. Shrimp hepatopancreas, it has a function, digestion and absorption and storage. This function, get, impaired that time. So that time it weakens the shrimp, and then Vibrio also attacking. Then where the other problems it will start when both together.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anu, you can go with the
Yes,
question
sir.
answers. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Then the participant called Jayapriya has asked a question. Which method is very easily to do waste management, biofloc or any other things? Sir?
No, with the biofloc, I think we could actually with the auto feeder, with the biofloc, because this auto feeder also, it's distributing the feed, continuously, and the FCR also we are getting like a 0. Below 1, I would say. And when we use this continuous probiotic, I told you the probiotic also, if the frequency is once in 3 days, we have to continuously use once in 3 days. It's not like 1 week or 10 days, and then we leave with the gap. It may not work, better. So if we use right type of probiotic and the frequency of application, no compromise with the frequency of application, and also as I told you with that water and everything, we have to boil it, and the reverse osmosis water, everything we follow correctly. It's giving good results, and we did not have any problem with the white spot and like a white figure in most of the ponds. And we had a problem with the running mortality at the end. I told you when the biomass exceeding the carrying capacity of the pond, that time we had a problem with the running mortality. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next question is asked by Sneha R. Pai about which probiotic bacteria is mainly used in shrimp farming. Is the probiotic bacteria species specific?
Actually, it's better to use the the right product which is suitable for your farm. In this thing, the probiotic, it's not important about the species. It's important is the gene or strain. That is very important. If you see most of the products, it's written almost the same species written in the if you see the brochure or maybe the product details, But the very important is the gene or strain, and it's better to if you you can try 2 or 3 reputed brands, and which one is good you can try in if the farmer is having 10 ponds, and can be tried 2 brands in 5 ponds in one brand, another 5 ponds in another brand, then you can see where you are getting good results, and how and also during this fermentation you can also check the sample, the total heterotrophic count at the lab level, and how many times it's increasing we can see. Here in our lab, we found that that bacterial load before application it went up to 12 times, 14 times like that.
Thank you, sir. Shall we proceed with one more question, or?
Yeah, you can proceed with one question, sir.
Yeah, no problem. Please, yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yeah, it is from Ravada Venkatesh. He's asking how much shrimp stocking in hectare in pond, and first day how many times of feeding is required, sir?
The actually stocking density depends on the infrastructure of the farm. How much what infrastructure they have, like aeration and other facilities what they have. But normally the ideal stocking density now the farmers are going for like ranging between 30 to 40 pieces per square meter. That means 3 lakhs to 4 lakhs per hectare.
Thank you, sir.
And the feeding frequency initially better to start with even after stocking, I recommend to go for 4 times per day.
Thank you, sir. I hope the query will be solved for the questioner.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I actually, as you are being the representative from Grovel Feeds, most of our students, they are working on this aquaculture feed management practice. Most of our students, they are doing the research on that. So can you highlight about the functional feeds as well as a nano, as well as the herbal-based diet for aquatic animals? Can you highlight some more aspects?
Actually, functional feed, it comes, different companies are working on with the different, like immunostimulant and some functional feed with the probiotics and combination of so many like ingredients, and some with the organic acid like that. But the functional feed, why definitely offer a solution? Why I am telling, because if the farmer mix the feed additives at the farm level, so many challenges are there. They have to use the good binder, and the quality of the binder matters. Then sometimes the feed is good, the quality of the binder is not good. Animal will not accept the feed, and also the quality of the labor who is mixing the feed. There are so many challenges when we do this mixing of feed additives at the farm level. This functional feed, it's definitely offer a solution, and also how to use it. If it is functional feed, some farmer they are using frequently with a very conservative, because the functional feed generally the prices are much higher than the normal feed. So they have to use very stringent feed management. The other thing, or they have to use the combination of normal feed and functional feed, like a functional feed, like a weekly once, full day, like they use, or weekly 2 times in a week. Some farmers use. It's getting good. They are getting good results.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, and another one question. If somebody want to approach Growell for their R&D based or anything on the training based on particularly into your feed management practice, can you give some advice to those people, particularly the students? Yeah.
Sure. We have a R&D farm. As I told you, we have a simple R&D farm, because our concept also, because most of the pond, here in India also, earthen ponds, maybe the line ponds, the percentage is very low, earthen ponds, and our SOP and everything, we are oriented towards small farmer and the earthen ponds, and we have a R&D farm, and we are also training, and it's open for the visitors to come and see, and it like every month, now because of this corona situation, COVID problem not coming, but earlier they used to every month, like 10 to 20 visitors, they used to come. They are farmers or dealers or students, they used to come and visit our R&D farm. And even sometimes, the students means they used to stay there for 1 or 2 days to see what is going on, the complete protocol, what they are following, like that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other questions? No, is there?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for your presence and your wonderful talk, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.